while on a quiet breakaway from work at the end of June, near the Somerset village of Cheddar, yes, the very one that originated cheddar cheese, I couldn't resist some retro hunting. We were rewarded early on in the holiday by a car boot and market on a farm just outside Cheddar. We arrived early. The regular traders were still setting up, so not much going on inside yet. There were some interesting ammo boxes though, but too deep to be practical to store Game Boy cartridges. Out the other side we found what we had come for, the car boot sale. And one of the larger ones I had seen for a while. Not unexpectedly, Nintendo Wii stuff was aplenty, as were PlayStation 2 games. Thankfully this poor abused canine was quickly rehomed. An almighty noise announced these toy cars being poured out. Would you trust an Xbox 360 from a car boot? Me neither. The one and only CRT. Shame it wasn't a good make. I'll pass. I find early camcorders visually fascinating, especially shoulder mount models. Let's take a moment. Has VHS come back into fashion again? I'm not so sure. An oxymoron, if ever I saw one. Zero display effort given here, a house clearance by the looks of it. Still, Mrs. TDO found more yarn to feed her hobby. In total contrast are the overly neat displays. Wait, isn't that the computer car Octavius Kitten marded over? It was £8, but I felt compelled to investigate. The red model. It looks complete too. After 3 rounds of the car boot, I eventually bought it for £5.50. Anyone for 80s binge watching? That's a whole chunk of my childhood, right there. There was something sad about the next sight, a 1/4-ton bag of soft toys. A guy pulled out this gun and put it back when he saw it had a lead. The lead was what drew me in. This would look great on my shelf. You can buy replacement rockets on eBay. Missing the front skid though, £2.50, and it was in the bag. Time for a quick cuppa. There's something about Thunderbird 2 that makes it my favourite. Sleek but practical. I hurry past the Barbie morgue. More games from a trader masquerading as a car boot seller. FIFA, the epitome of single-use plastic. I am compelled to rummage, but get bored quickly. Please don't tell me that I missed something great here. With the first pass done, it was onwards and inside to a permanent market space. Now if I had enough room for this... There was a pretty decent collectibles store, and this Thunderbird 2 caught my eye. Shame it's the ugly modern version. Now this takes me back to my time at Dixon's in 1991. I'm still not sure if this was a display, or whether they were selling stuff. Outside again, and this looked interesting on a trader's stall. The box art promises so much excitement, firing directly at your friend. But check out the old review Ashens did for the sad reality. At how many car boots do you find a hand-fired rocket parachute to illuminate 300 metres? So tempting, but sensibility wins out. Carpet, golf, and excitement. Nope, none of those words belong together. With so many Wii sold, it's inevitable to find boxes like these. I felt drawn to this plastic bag, and was rewarded with several R4 cards for the DS. After 3 goes round, before we lost our heads too, we called it a day here. By this time, many were repacking their cars and leaving. My haul, some of which I didn't get footage of. The computer car for £5.50. Works, but in need of a replacement rubber roller for the cards. A working PlayStation with Ridge Racer for £5. The first PlayStation I got to try was in 1994, and it was playing Ridge Racer. This guy brought a Japanese import into Dixon's, and I helped him find a TV that worked correctly with the 60Hz video output. The Buck Rogers diecast for £2.50. 3 DS R4 cards for £4.50. A Sony disc-based digital Mavica camera for £5.50. The first digital camera I ever used, and hopefully a future refurb for this channel. And Duke Nukem for £1. I love the original Duke Nukem, but gave up waiting for the sequel after 10 years, so I'm curious to see how this plays. Total spend for all this retro goodness, £24. The following day we visited Weston-super-Mare. Not far from the seafront is MT Games and DVD Exchange. Think independent CEX type store. They had a good selection of retro hardware and software at eBay style prices, but without the weight. There was even the Dixon's own brand Princetronic version of the VideoMaster SuperScore I featured previously. Plenty of box games were available for those of you who like to create those visually impressive software collections. And the usual unboxed carts for those of us who just like to play. From Dreamcast to Saturn and Mega CD, Mega Drive to Master System, Sega was well represented too. Quite a few duplicates though, of the usual suspects. I left wishing I'd been given a Game & Watch as a kid. Then it was on to the pier, which I've visited many times since a small child. Mainly coin pushers and fruit machines, it doesn't have the same draw it did in the 80s with the heyday of the big Sega games. But it did have a small retro area of re-released arcade machines. Track and Field drew me in, but it was soon evident that the left button was not responding. At only 50p a go I soldiered on, but it definitely wasn't playing properly. That's my excuse for playing so badly, and I'm sticking to it. Should they remake this classic, perhaps in 3D with a running pad? If it catches on, you heard it here first. The sorry state of repair continued to the Space Invaders cabinet, the controls needing to be pushed hard before they responded. No longer a fun game, more of a physical workout. So I went looking for pinball machines at the far end where they were the last time, and found only this lonely Batman specimen squeezed into a dark corner. The pinball disrespect put me off rewarding them with my money. Later I found 3 more tables, but this time the opposite was true, and they were made unplayable by a bright light above. So it was time to take out some frustration. But even this wasn't registering all my hits. About the only highlight was this new gun game with a beautifully crisp display and moving revolver parts. I forget what it was called, but it had a cartoon western theme. Comments below if you recognise it. If you visit, I recommend PJ's Ice Cream Parlour across the road. So many flavours to choose from, and the rhubarb and custard was delicious. When Maplin's closed down, I treated myself to a cheap metal detector. Nothing of value yet, I'm afraid. I'm now an expert at finding tent pegs and bolts. Surely somebody would have missed this trailer manoeuvring wheel. One other visit was to Wells, a few miles south of Cheddar, home to the magnificent Wells Cathedral. Not far from it was this small retro shop called Insane Games. Mostly stocking more recent consoles and games, it did have a small selection of more retro machines. They also had a Neo Geo multi-arcade cabinet at 20 pence per play. Fortunately for Mrs. TDO, it was broken down. It even had a small selection of Spectrum tapes. So those have been the retro highlights of my holiday break. Let me know what yours have been in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye until next time.
Let me see your identification. We don't need to see his identification. Follow me. Move along.